Bullion has the lowest prices that may save you hundreds on your next order. So before you make your next investment, do the math and join the over 15,000 new customers who have recently made the switch to SD Bullion. Why pay more?
In the past, you've discussed how the Chinese yuan, the RMB, had not been included in the IMF's SDR basket of currencies. But now that has actually changed. They decided that they will now include it in the basket of currencies that makes up the SDR. So what is your perspective on this, and how do you think it'll impact the economic reset?
Well, to begin with, they were turned down last May or so, and that was not quite so much an act of vengeance and petty display as I once thought. It was more like, well, you're really not ready, China. Why don't you do the following 3 or 4 things as requirements and get back to us, and we'll revisit this decision. And they did. And some of it had to do with international ease of exchange, and the other one had to do with accounting. So the Chinese complied, and just to make sure that the U.S. had their attention, the Chinese dumped $250 billion worth of treasury bonds. So this is all part of the big reset, and the implications are really quite significant. Let's just say, I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but let's just say that China has 12% of the SDR basket. I don't know exactly what it is. I know it's in the teens, I think, but let's take the 12%. Well, that means that many banking systems across the world are going to start to dump treasuries and buy 12% of their reserves, like in South Korea, for instance. 12% they're going to make Chinese RMB bonds. So the Chinese are going to have a challenge now to make those bonds available. The Chinese have a unique distinction now, and something that the Western press hardly ever mentions. They don't have any external debt. So now they're going to have to make these bonds available on a global scale. And it's kind of ironic that they're going to have to make sure there's sufficient debt out there in order to make, to share in the foundation for the banking reserve systems. The banking reserves are all debt securities. Since when is debt wealth? I mean, come on. So this is all part of the reset. The implications are going to be more diversification out of treasuries and into RMB bonds.
Now, moving back to the yuan, the RMB, besides it being accepted into the SDR basket of currencies, you've said that it marches along on several new global financial platforms. Did you want to discuss a little bit about how this will impact the economic reset?
Sure. The one Asian infrastructure investment bank has gotten a lot of press. That appears to be the replacement of the IMF and World Bank. And there's been some propaganda from the Western press. The Western press loves to, poke fun at these Eastern initiatives. But I read one press release, and it was kind of funny. It said, "Oh, look at that! The AIB is going to be funded by U.S. Treasuries, so it's not going to be this anti-dollar mechanism after all." Well, yeah, it is. The AIB is going to be originally funded with treasury bonds, then they're going to all be dumped. They're all going to be converted. You're talking about a platform to dump the treasuries. Golly, how stupid, the report that came out in the Western press. Okay, so they're all contributing treasury bonds, and then those will be sold and into the form of gold trade notes and RMB currency and a lot of other things. Okay, so that's just the AIIB. The Chinese also have what they call the CHIPS, the Chinese International Payment System, CIP. I prefer to call it CHIPS, but it's going to be a rival to SWIFT, the international, very standard, long-standing payment transaction system, bank to bank. So the Chinese now have a rival, and I've heard a couple of eyewitness reports on how it is used, and it's a little quicker and a little slicker. Apparently, you set up some background things, and then you do a password, and then you do like think of it as a super credit card or a super ID card, and you swipe it through, and poof, your $1.5 million has moved. You don't need the 2 days for it to clear through the Federal Reserve, which is basically a method for the Federal Reserve and the Western banks to collect the interest and steal it for 1 day. I know it doesn't sound like much, but if you do 100 transactions in the year, you're talking about theft of interest for 100 days. Okay, you've also got a debt rating service that's moving into place. I think it's called the Dong. No, I'm sorry. I used to have this stuff at the tip of my tongue, but I haven't written about it for a few months. They've got some debt service ratings, and they're going to be competing with Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's. It's a whole lot more than that. They've got this new development bank, and I like to tell the story. I repeat this story often, but it's kind of funny and it's worth mentioning. Originally, they called it the new development banks, the BRICS Development Bank, but now they're just calling it the BRICS Bank. Well, why isn't it development anymore? Well, it is development, but the AIIB is development. They're changing the name of the BRICS Development Bank to just the BRICS Bank because they didn't want heat and friction from originally calling it the BRICS Gold Central Bank. The BRICS Development Bank has now morphed to become the BRICS Bank, and it is going to be, I think, the location where a lot of U.S. treasuries and Euro bonds and British gilts are sent to die. They're going to be shipped off to the new development bank where they're sold off and converted to gold bullion. So I believe the original BRICS Development Bank is going to be a dumping ground of treasuries and other sovereign bonds to buy gold. Okay. The RMB marches along on several new global financial platforms. To begin with, way back in 2006, there was a yuan swap facility between Brazil and China. It was a prototype. You had 3 or 4 or 5 of the biggest Brazilian banks, and you had 3 giant Chinese banks, and they settled all their trade, bilateral trade, they settled it all with Chinese yuan and real, no dollars. Now you have 32 countries that have yuan swap facilities, and if you think that's really just minor countries, you're dead wrong. It's Canada, Australia, Britain, Germany, France, Switzerland, and of course, a lot of the emerging market nations and Asian nations. So as you get more and more countries of the world participating in the RMB-related platforms, you're going to see less and less in the way of U.S. dollar trade settlement. And I think that one of the biggest things that's going to happen in 2016 is the rapid rise of trade settlement in the form of RMB, Chinese currency.
Click here to subscribe for free so you will be notified when more of this interview is released. Or click over here to watch the full interview now. This video was brought to you by ReluctantPreppers.com. Click here to watch Reluctant Prepper's interview with Andy Hoffman, where Andy Hoffman explains why gold and silver are a means of protection against crisis.